It's Monday, August 31st, 2020. I'm Greg Nibbler, and this is Digital Trends Live. Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. I am Greg Nibbler, and thanks for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. We broadcast live here every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And let's get started off with some news right now. The latest news in the TikTok saga is that a sale could be announced tomorrow, as reports are indicating that the company's accepted the terms of a bid from one potential suitor. So ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, technically has until November 12th to complete the sale and release all control over any data the social media platform has acquired. This is all after Trump issued an executive order saying they must sell. So there has naturally been a lot of companies that are interested in acquiring the platform, particularly because of its claims that it has 100 million monthly users in the US and 50 million daily active users. So that user data is valuable for a number of different things, including the use in targeted advertising. The bids are said to have come down to two different companies and partnerships, though. On one side, you have Microsoft, who has teamed up with Walmart, of all companies. On the other side, you have software company Oracle. Oracle reportedly offered $10 billion in cash, $10 billion in Oracle stock, and 50% of annual revenue for 2 years from TikTok to go back to ByteDance. Regardless of which bidder wins, the deal is expected to be in the range of $20 to $30 billion. However, last-minute updates by the Chinese government to its export control list could throw a curveball into this, since they added artificial intelligence capabilities that provide, quote, personalized content recommendations based on data analysis, unquote. So that basically means this: they could limit the sale of those kinds of technologies to other countries. It's hard to say if that will have an effect on the TikTok sale at this point, but it's safe to say a lot is going to play out in the coming hours and days. And you can follow along at digitaltrends.com. In a sign of things heating up on social media platforms as we venture further into election season ahead of the U.S. presidential election in November, Twitter is actively removing or flagging posts that it says violates its policies. So we got a couple here. The first post was flagged from House Republican Whip Steve Scalise, which was marked with a label as manipulated media on Sunday. The tweet showed an activist by the name of Adi Barkan as he had a video conversation with Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. Barkan has ALS and speaks through a device that utilizes eye tracking to formulate words in a computerized voice. Now, originally, Barkan had asked Biden, quote, "We agree that we can redirect some of the funding," unquote. Now, the Scalise video added in the words "for police" at the end of the sentence using the same computerized voice that sounds like Barkan. And that's why it was flagged as manipulated media. Now, another tweet that was completely taken down by Twitter was from President Trump for posting misleading or false statistics associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. The tweet was originally posted by a QAnon supporter, which claimed the CDC had updated its statistics to say only 6% of COVID-19 deaths were from the disease, and the other 94% of the over 182,000 American deaths that have happened so far were from other causes. That information is false because that 94% had what are called comorbidities, which are contributing factors that make COVID-19 so much more deadly for those with pre-existing conditions. Apologies for the pronouncement of the medical term, but it is very, very much false information. So that is, again, part of the big debate about social media as far as how regulation and moderation of content is being handled when it comes to political modification of statements and misinformation associated with the coronavirus pandemic. Again, expect a lot more of this to happen in the coming weeks and months, and read all about it at digitaltrends.com. I know that saying something seems like it's a Black Mirror episode probably gets overused, including by me, but Elon Musk's demonstration of Neuralink really seems like it could be the start of a Black Mirror episode, and he pretty much said so himself. So the ultimate goal of Neuralink is to create a brain-to-machine interface, which the company says will be necessary for the survival of humanity, since artificial intelligence will one day reach singularity, then potentially pass humans in intelligence and leave us behind, or worse, Skynet. So the demonstration on Friday didn't show a human with an implant or any wild and crazy functionality, but it did give a little bit more detailed look at how the device will actually work, which he says is like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires, and it does indeed kind of have that look. So the interface device is about the size of a nickel and would actually replace a small section of your skull so it can lie flush on your head. Wires then extend from the link into the cortical surface of the brain for now, with plans on going deeper at another time. The surgery to implant the Neuralink device would actually be carried out by a robot surgeon that they have designed as well, which will then be able to implant it with general anesthesia, and they said in under an hour. So there were 3 pigs demonstrating Neuralink during the live broadcast event, one without a chip, one that had had a chip put in and then removed, and one with the chip currently in, for which they highlighted the normal activity of the pig while at the same time receiving brain signals from it. Eventually, they've said you'll be able to hear music in your head. Maybe you'll be able to improve eyesight or restore motor functionality, and even potentially upload your memories to have them re-downloaded into another body or a robot. Yes, that's Black Mirror. You can read more about it at digitaltrends.com. Flying taxis are steadily making progress toward reality, with a number of companies working on them, including one in Japan, which showcased their version of a flying vehicle in a public demonstration. It's called the SD03, and it's made by a company called SkyDrive Inc., and the demonstration was the first of its kind in Japan. The SD03 is powered electrically with 8 motors and rotors to help it lift off and fly, and it rests on something like helicopter skids, so you won't be driving any extra miles after landing. However, with the direct vertical takeoff and landing, you may not need to. So the vehicle's size is about the same as 2 cars parked side by side, and the company has a goal of door-to-door travel for its customers, so you may never have to actually be on a real road. SkyDrive has touted that the use of these vehicles would not only speed up traffic, but it could lessen the stress on infrastructure or even the need for bridges in some cases. So the next steps involve gaining government approval for further tests beyond the Toyota test field. Toyota is one of the bigger backers of SkyDrive, and it's hoped that a 2-seater commercial version will be available and in use by 2023, which lines up with Japan's goal to have flying taxi service in place. A lot of other companies are working on this as well, but it's always cool to see something like this in action, and you can read more about it at digitaltrends.com. And we keep you up to date on all kinds of technology here at Digital Trends, and there have been a lot of rocket launches going on, some successful, some not so successful. And here to recap some of those, we've got our own Georgina Torbett joining us. Georgina, always good to talk to you. Love talking about rocket launches and space and everything that you cover. But let's start off with this. There's so many that went on, and some of them weren't as successful as others. Which one do you want to talk about first here?
Yeah, so it was a real weekend for rockets. There were 4 launches in total. The United Launch Alliance, that was one that was going to be quite a big deal, but that had to be scrubbed within seconds of launch time. It's very dramatic. There was an issue with the ground system there. The ULA have said the rocket's fine. It's gonna go ahead in about a week. So that launch got called off. And then SpaceX also had 2 launches actually scheduled for the same day, which was very unusual for them and kind of a big deal. But their Starlink launch also had to be scrubbed because of the bad weather. But they were able to go ahead with another launch, the SATCOM launch, which was part of their small sat rideshare program, where they take other companies and they send up a selection of satellites all in one launch. And so that went ahead on Sunday night. And also on Sunday night, Rocket Labs, the small New Zealand company, returned after having an incident back in July where one of their rockets exploded. They sent another one up on Sunday night, and that also went very smoothly. So an exciting weekend for launches.
Definitely. Well, going back to that SpaceX one that was successful, the SATCOM launch, because you mentioned it's part of the rideshare program to where they can set up, people can get more satellites up there essentially for a lower price. But I know there's a few unique things that they did with this one in particular, with this launch, as far as going over the poles. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this was in fact, it was the first polar launch from Florida since the 1960s. So typically, if you're going to send a rocket over the North or South Pole, you would depart from California. That's typically where it's done from. But in this case, there was a risk of wildfires in California, so they didn't want to send it from over there. And so typically you wouldn't send rockets from Florida over the poles because that necessitates flying over land, which can be potentially dangerous. So in this case, they took a different route for the rocket to kind of avoid the land masses. And so that's just a kind of neat, unusual feature of how these things turn out sometimes. And the other really notable thing about it was that they landed the booster on land. And so SpaceX is famous for their reusable rockets, where the first stages can land and be used again. But typically they land in the Atlantic Ocean and they get picked up by a drone ship. But in this case, they actually landed back on land. And there's some very impressive footage of the rocket stage coming down and landing vertically, perfectly in place. It was very neat indeed.
And it does seem like they're getting better and better at this as it goes on. I mean, naturally they would, but just that example right there, landing it back on land instead of at sea, and even the risks associated with that, but still landing it just fine. So with that launch, I guess, and then you did mention that the SpaceX one was scrubbed, so that Starlink mission will go up another time, I'm assuming, soon, since they're going to be setting those up. I want to talk about something else with SpaceX, but before that, I want to go back to the Rocket Lab successful one that you talked about. So they had a big failure that happened previous to this successful launch, right?
Yeah, they had a rather unfortunate incident in July where the rocket took off and then it exploded and they lost all of the satellites on board. And that turned out to have been due to an electrical short, I believe they said. So during testing, there was an intermittent failure, and while they were testing, they didn't catch it. And then while the rocket actually took off, it exploded. So that was quite a big setback for them. But for a small company, they've been very proactive about dealing with that and acknowledging what went wrong, what they needed to do differently. And then by the looks of the launch on Sunday, they're right back. It's sort of in place and everything went off really neatly. So that was quite impressive.
I love the fact there are so many different companies involved in this. I mean, that's 3 that we're talking about right now. But going to SpaceX, something else that has been talked about a lot is the Starship, which is their ultimate goal. You know, their premium ship that they're working towards building, but they're doing all these prototype tests. And I know that there's some stuff that we're expecting maybe soon with it. Can you kind of walk us through just a little bit about where Starship is at?
Sure. So they're very much in the testing and development phase of Starship. They're continually changing things and trying new things. And so they've built a selection of prototypes. And so previously they had been working on one prototype at a time, but quite a few of them had been destroyed in sometimes quite dramatic explosions, implosions, accidents. Like they test them to failure, for that reason. And so before, it had been taking them a while, like one prototype would be destroyed and then they'd need to build another, and that took some time. So what they're doing now is they actually have 2 prototypes that they're working on simultaneously. And one is called the SN5, which has already gone through quite a bit of testing and recently performed what's called a hop test, which is where the engines are fired and it hovers about a few hundred meters in the air before coming down, just to check that the engines are working. And so what we're waiting for now is for the other prototype, the SN6, to do that same hop testing. And so that had been maybe going ahead this weekend, but it turned out that the weather wasn't good for it. So we're waiting on confirmation of that second prototype getting working. And then also something that's quite exciting is there's another prototype that's in the early stages, which is called the SN8. And the reason that one's interesting is that it has the nose cone at the top and it has the body fins. So it finally really looks like a Starship. The previous prototypes look sort of like steel tubes, but the SN8, which they're building at the moment, really looks like the Starship, which is, so a lot of people are keeping an eye on that and are kind of excited to see that take its first flight.
It is really cool. I mean, even the tube hopping up and down is still pretty cool to watch. Just kind of that feat. It looks a little bit surreal, like it's just a CGI video, but I know it's real. So seeing where they go with this is just really, really cool, and it's just fun that there's so much going on. I mean, that's just rocket launches over the last few days. Like you said, in the coming weeks, we're gonna have more and more of these, and that's why it's always great to stay on top of that. And Georgina, I always appreciate you being here on the show to talk about all of this and fill in the details for everybody. And I know we've got all the articles up to at Digital Trends that people can go check out right there. Georgina, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It was really lovely to speak with you.
always, Georgina Torbett right here on Digital Trends Live. She knows everything about rockets, and that's why I love having her on the show to talk about this. And like I said, check out all the articles at Digital Trends. And going from flying cars to rockets, why not go to drones? Just makes sense, right? So we've got Riley Wynn up next, talking about drones and 3 different ways that they are helping people. So we've got that. We've got awesome tech with Drew Prindle coming up. So stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live.
When you think of drones, do you think of the military using them to carry out missions, or Domino's using them for pizza delivery? Drones have plenty of uses, some scary and some ridiculous. But a lot of people don't know they can actually save lives. I'm Riley Wynn with Digital Trends, and here are 3 ways drones are doing just that. Why risk sending a human firefighter into a burning building when you can send in a firefighting drone? Drone manufacturer EHang recently debuted its Rapid Responder 216F firefighter drone. The drone uses machine vision to locate where the fire is blazing, then launches a laser-guided fire extinguisher bomb through the windows to try and put out the fire from within. Then it can also hover around the burning building and spray firefighting foam on the outside. It's pretty freaking awesome. Each 216F drone can carry 150 liters of the firefighting foam and 6 of the laser-guided fire extinguishing bombs. They can be dispatched remotely as first responders before traditional firefighters may be able to reach the fire. This can reduce the response time and hopefully reduce casualties in the process. Meet the Shark Spotter drone. By its name, I'm sure you can guess what it does. But it doesn't just spot sharks, it's also used in rescue missions as well. The Shark Spotter is used on the Australian coast to detect sharks on the shores and any other threats. The drone uses a machine learning called deep learning to identify objects and categorize them. If a shark is spotted, the operator alerts the lifeguard station to notify the beach goers. In case of an emergency, the drone is equipped with a life-saving flotation pod, along with an electronic shark repellent that can be dropped in the water if it's shark infested. In 2018, the Shark Spotter rescued 2 swimmers caught in a riptide. The drone flew down the beach 800 meters from the lifeguard station and dropped its lifesaver pod, and the swimmers made it back to shore. It only took about 70 seconds for the drone to rescue 2 people, a fraction of the time it would take us humans. When it comes to organ delivery and transplants, minutes can be the difference between life and death. Last year, for the first time ever, a drone delivered an organ that was successfully transplanted into a patient at the University of Maryland Medical Center. It only took 5 minutes for the drone to deliver the new kidney from the facility it was being stored at. This is a fraction of the time an organ delivery normally takes, because a drone isn't going to get stuck in traffic. Organ and medicine delivery via drones is not only a faster and cheaper way to do things, but it can also increase the size of the donor pool and ultimately save more lives. If you're ever in a dangerous situation and need some saving, it may not be a first responder coming to the rescue, but instead, it could be a drone. Until next time, I'm Riley Wynn with Digital Trends, and thanks for watching.
And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It is Monday, and it is now time for awesome tech you can't buy yet. All right, awesome tech you can't buy yet. Joining us, of course, is Drew Prindle to talk about whatever these products are that he has scoured the internet to find. It is always interesting to see what kind of crowdfunding campaigns are out there. Drew, hello, good to see you. And which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about this Arsenal 2 thing, this little camera add-on. So this thing basically gives your DSLR an AI brain. And what I mean by that is so you know how your cell phone doesn't necessarily have the best camera on it, but it compensates for that by basically doing all kinds of software processing and color correction and focus and all of this stuff. That all happens in software. It's not actually your camera doing that. It's not like you're adjusting the aperture and all of that stuff. That concept of using software to make the photo better, right on the device, is pretty much what this thing does. So it uses AI to do all of these things that you see on the screen right now. And it blends them together in such a way that it brings out the best parts of the scene so that you don't have to worry about the little technical details of what you're shooting. You just worry about the composition, basically what you're looking at. And it takes the rest from there. So you can see the before and after photos, what it would look like with and without this this Arsenal 2 thing on your camera. And it's absolutely mind-blowing, some of the shots that they show off in this video. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out the video on this one.
Yeah, and we're taking a look at it here, and it's $150. It was actually less than I thought it would be. This is definitely cool, adding in this kind of aspect and ability with it. I would imagine for true photographers, I don't know if that's something that they would. I don't know if they're more traditional, would want to be doing it by hand, and now everybody can actually have it with this. I wonder about that kind of argument, but either way, this is a pretty cool add-on for this.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be purists, actual professional photographers that are just ugh, you're cheating. That's not real photography. But how many people do you know that are actual true good professional photographers and can pull off an image like that without any assistance? This is basically just training wheels for the rest of us, and it'll help you take better shots. And if it's years of practice that help you do that, or a little tool that you can buy for $150, take your pick.
Yep. Well, so that one is called the Arsenal 2. So again, you can check that out there. It looks like this one, oh yeah, definitely funded. They had a goal of $100,000. They've got 24 days to go. And it's going up just right when I'm watching this. So it's about $2.5 million right now is where they're at.
Yeah, the original
so a lot of
one
people want to use this.
Yeah, the original Arsenal was one of the most highly funded photography projects on Kickstarter ever, and it raised over $2 million itself. So it's not surprising that the second generation that they've come back with new and improved features is also up over $2 million.
Well, going from there, let's go on to our next one here. What do we got?
Let's talk about the Whipper. So another thing that has a lot of there's a weird subculture on crowdfunding almost is at home and travel focused workout gear. There's all kinds of super clever workout devices on these platforms, and this is the latest addition to that growing trend. And it's interesting because not only is it a different kind of workout thing, it's effectively a rowing machine, but it's tiny. It's 6 inches by 6 inches. It's a little cube. And it's designed to be like those other gym things that they basically hook into your door, or you can attach them to anything that's kind of sturdy in your house, and it's small enough to fit into a carry-on. But despite being super tiny and compact and all that stuff, it gives you a massive range of different workouts. That it basically replaces a rowing machine, and if you know what rowing machines are, they're huge and they're super unruly, and you kind of have to have a house with a dedicated room for it in order to use one. But this thing, it's the size of a 6-pack, and you can fit it in a carry-on. So yeah, pretty neat idea.
This is actually really cool. When you're looking at the tech behind it, and $199, that's a super good deal if that's what it starts out with. I do have to say the stand-up paddleboard workout looks pretty ridiculous, so I wouldn't do that one in front of anybody. But I guess I can't say it's any more ridiculous than other ones.
I want to know who's working out like doing the stand-up paddleboard workout so that they could become like the best paddleboarder. That's not exactly like a competitive activity that you need to be at like peak performance. It's more of just like a leisurely lake activity. It's kind of weird to me, but yeah.
Go stand-up paddleboard, bro. Gonna be a champion. But anyway, but still, no, this thing is pretty cool. So again, it's the this one in particular. So Carbon. The mirror with the personal trainer inside. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's a different one that I'm taking a look at right there. I skipped on to another one. The Whipper. The Whipper is what we're talking about. So, Whipper, very cool. Paddle, ski, row, and again, also very well funded. About $2.3 million out of a $25,000 goal. All right, so we've got two. What's the third one?
All right, I saved the best for last this week. This last one is not actually a product you can buy, but it's almost better. So, let me back up a little bit. Basically, it's a racing mech. And this is something that I know you've seen, Greg. You saw it at CES a few years back. But for those of you who don't know, there was this guy who has built a four-legged like mech, a mechanical robot thing with legs that move. And you sit inside the cockpit and you control each of its limbs with your arms. And he had this wild idea and kind of brought it to life. And I actually went out and got an in-person like demo of it. I got to see it try and move a few years back. And the problem was it couldn't quite walk back then. It really could just like shudder and move and make a lot of noise, but it wasn't functional in that it could walk. But apparently they have improved it. They've gotten to the point where it can actually walk. And now what they're doing is they're trying to kick off this racing league. They want they imagine this thing to be like NASCAR. They're going to have a bunch of different pilots racing these giant robots. And what the Kickstarter is for is they want people to come and like try out, and basically you pay, I believe it's $1,900 for a chance to like be one of these pilots and go through their training course and be involved in the first ever racing mech circuit.
I gotta wonder if that's real time footage or if they sped that up, because as I recall, it doesn't move very fast. I've sat inside that thing before at CES. I was able to climb up into it, and it's cool. You are you're way higher up than that actually looks. Like you're pretty far up there. That's awesome. I don't know if I would pay $1,900 though for it, but I like this. I like the idea of a mech. Would you join the Mech Racing League?
I mean, not for $2,000, no. Maybe in the future when it doesn't have that kind of startup cost and it's maybe a little bit more fleshed out. Honestly, I am super impressed that they've come this far. When I saw it, I was like, this is going nowhere. It's a flashy, cool robot that's kind of gonna fizzle out in a couple years. But really, what happened is those demos that we were getting a couple years ago were enough to attract a bunch of engineers and designers and stuff who all kind of have been collaborating on this for the past couple years, and it's gotten remarkably better. So yeah, if you're at all interested in this, I highly encourage you to go check out the videos that they have on that page, because it's kind of impressive now.
It is. I mean, that's really cool. If they've brought it that far along in just a couple of years, that's pretty amazing. But with all of these too, you can check them all out at digitaltrends.com for awesome tech you can't buy yet. We do this every week where Drew finds all of these different crowdfunding campaigns to take a look at, and it is always fun seeing them. Drew, good to see you. Good to talk to you. I hope to see you in one of those mechs someday. Maybe we can race each other. But until then, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, later, Greg.
All right, Drew Prindle right here on Digital Trends Live. And again, thanks everybody for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. We broadcast live here every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, which means you can join us, join in the conversations that we get to have, and hit subscribe so that way you get the notifications when we pop up. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have returning Winnie Sun for some great financial advice and an interview with Steve-O. Yes, Steve-O from Jackass will be here on Digital Trends Live. So that is all just part of tomorrow's show, in addition to all of the latest tech news, which we expect a lot to be going on. There's some Samsung things that are going to be happening. There's also some things that are going to be happening possibly with some other things that are happening, maybe with the TikTok sale. We'll have you all up to date on that. You can follow along with Digital Trends all day long on Twitter or whatever platform is your favorite, and including the website to make sure that you know everything that's happening. All right, I'm Greg Nibbler. I'll see you right back here tomorrow with another edition of Digital Trends Live.